Hello and welcome to your go-to Detroit Pistons podcast, the Pistons Pulse, co-hosted by me, Bryce Simon of Motor City Hoops.
And Omari Sankofa II, Pistons beat writer for the Detroit Free Press.
And no time today to shamelessly plug all of the work we do because we are joined by senior NBA writer for The Athletic, host of the Katz and Shoot podcast, a Knicks and NBA podcast, Fred Katz. Fred, thank you for joining us. We appreciate having you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I was excited to do this.
Yes, it will be good. Wes is also here. Thank you to Wes for being with us. And little Winona, she is doing great, it sounds like. Omari, is this going to be okay having a Knicks guy on the podcast? Like that rivalry can sometimes get a little bit, hopefully this will be okay with our viewers.
I think it's good. I mean, we might as well just start leaning into the playoffs as much as we can. I feel like Pistons fans want the Knicks in the second or third round, however it shakes out. I think the Knicks want to see the Pistons, or maybe not. I don't know. Those regular season games didn't go too well, so I actually don't know if they want to see the Pistons. Fred obviously could give us a bit more background on that, but no, let's give Fred a warm welcome, everybody. Let's save the Pistons Knicks animosity for May or whenever we get to that point.
Fred, real quick, what is the status of the Knicks? You know, I was talking to Andrew Claudio the other day, good friend of the podcast, good friend of mine, and he was like, it's not great right now for Knicks fans. Where are you at on this Knicks team?
I am at the place that I said on my podcast, I think it was last week, that no matter who the Knicks play in the playoffs, this is how I'm making a vow to handle it this way, no matter what. No matter who the Knicks play in the playoffs, whether they play the best possible basketball matchup for them, and then all of those players are out, all the team's best players are out with hangnails. Or if they play just like the fully loaded Thunder and Shea is playing better than Michael Jordan, I'm picking every Knicks series to go 6 or 7 games. That's just what's going to happen. They will make sure that game against the easiest competition, they will make sure to drop those 2 and then win a tougher than should be series in 6. And they will take a couple off of the Thunder. And so I just think they're all going 6 or 7. That's kind of the identity of this team right now. Even when they had that 7-game winning streak not too long ago, it was like, these are all against tankers and these games are too close. They were too close against the Nets. They were too close against Utah. They were too close against Indy. It's a odd group for how talented the group actually is, and for a team whose record is objectively very good.
So we'll come back to the Knicks because we will talk about and get your thoughts on just kind of the state of the Eastern Conference as a whole and who the Pistons should want to play or shouldn't want to play and all of that. Before we get your thoughts on the Pistons, though, there was a big game last night in the basketball world that was not an NBA game. 0-2. Any thoughts on the result of last night's national championship game?
I tweeted right after the result was in. Shout out Peyton Siva, former Piston. Of course, that's why I said that. I had nothing to do with the Louisville, Michigan game in 2014.
I was very confused by that tweet. Most of your tweets I don't understand because it's like pop culture that I just have nothing. I didn't get the Peyton Siva one, so this makes more sense. Respect.
Yeah, I didn't want to just openly hate on Michigan because I live in the state of Michigan. I don't want to be the Michigan hater after they won the championship. So I just said shout out Peyton Siva. That's all I had to say.
Why did you just say Michigan sucks? I didn't want him to win. This is worse. Fred,
Peyton Siva is a former Piston, deserves a shout out. That's all it was.
Fred, how was your bracket? My daughter won the bracket here. My daughter knows more WWE wrestlers than she knows college basketball players. So shout out her. How did your bracket play out? What did you think of the tournament?
I have not done a bracket in years.
I love it.
I don't know the first thing about the NCAA tournament. I'll study up on these guys when they get to the NBA. I grew up a bigger college fan than I am NBA fan. That I was NBA fan, and now because it's my job, I just feel like if I'm watching basketball, I got to be catching up on everything that goes on in the league, even if it's just what's the latest with the Sacramento Kings rotation. So I do that, and I stomach the fact that I'm missing out on college basketball.
Love it. Maxime Renault. That's
who was
what's
your
up with the
team growing
Kings.
up?
Maxime Renault. That's what's up there.
Yeah.
Who was your team, Fred?
Syracuse. And I went to Missouri. I was a
Okay.
Syracuse fan growing up, and I went to Syracuse for 1 year, and then I went to Missouri.
So we have to kick Fred off the podcast because I'm from Kansas, arch rival Missouri, and then a Syracuse team he probably cheered for beat Kansas in the national championship game when I was in high school, led by freshman Carmelo Anthony and a block shot in the corner by Hakeem Warwick. Was that part of your Syracuse fandom days?
Yeah, 100%. That was a huge moment for me, and led by Syracuse head coach Jerry McNamara also.
6 threes in the first half.
First half of that game.
Fred, I was an actual fan of Kansas basketball, that like fanatic, and I was heartbroken. I think I was a sophomore in high school or something. So, okay, let's talk Detroit Pistons basketball. Fred, it is April 7th. The Detroit Pistons are already playing meaningless basketball games for the best of reasons possible. Your thoughts on the fact that Detroit has wrapped up the number 1 seed in a year where they weren't supposed to, and in a year where Cade Cunningham hasn't played in a few weeks. What is this team to you?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly thought they were going to kind of crater without Cade, and they've had some impressive wins. They've got a really great dynamic that I think goes beyond the talent of the roster, which is obviously very high, where they are just the classic case. Every single year you see it with maybe 1, 2, 3 teams, and you see the opposite too, where they are just so much better than the sum of their parts. They're just so much better than that because they play well together offensively, because they figure out interesting ways to cut and play fast, which makes up for what should be a legitimately bad half-court offense, but isn't legitimately bad. It will struggle and they'll not hit their threes, but their offense is not bad, and they make up for it with offensive rebounding and physicality and free throws and all that stuff. And then defensively, they're so on a string. They're so intense. They're so tied together. They're so competitive. I mean, Omari knows, I've seen him at a few different Pistons games this year, and I've tried to spend some time around them, and I'm sure Omari knows, you both know a million times better than me. Like, they have such a defensive-minded culture is probably not the right way to put it, because I feel like they just have a gritty culture, like a competitive culture, and that lends itself to defense. But I think they just like to get competitive over whatever they could possibly get competitive about. And it's kind of the personality of those guys on that team. And props to JB Bickerstaff for, fostering and growing that sort of environment. I enjoy watching the Pistons. They mess up every single game that they play. They make it absolutely hideous, and I love that.
Fred, like you said, you've been around the team quite a bit this season. Just some background: you were with the team in LA when they played the Lakers and Clippers back in December, and I think they dropped the Clippers game, but then Lakers ended up being a pretty impressive win. Then most recently saw you in OKC last week, and that easily could have been a nothing game. Cade's out, Stu's out. They've got several key guys out, and it goes into overtime, just kind of inexplicably, a game that they should not have been in. And that's just been the theme for them all season, as you've seen. What's impressed you, maybe just going from the playoff series last year, where it's a competitive team, but clearly had some deficiencies? Where have you seen them improve the most, whether that's just going from a good defensive team to a great defensive team? Obviously a mix of things there. I guess what's impressed you most as far as just the sheer improvement from last year?
Can I name 3 things?
Sure.
Thing number one.
Do as much as you want, Fred. You take over, please.
Thing number 1 is Cade is just way better. And I recognize this doesn't explain the fact they played really good basketball since he's been out, but Cade is way better. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Now I'm not sure what I'm going to do about my MVP ballot. If Cade had played 4 more games, I'd be sure. I would know exactly what I was going to do, at least in terms of who the 5 guys were going to be, because I would surely have Cade on there. I think he's had an unbelievable year. And I also think the thing with Cade is, in some ways, I actually think he's a little bit underrated, because with all the talk of how much Cade has led this team offensively on a team where they play tons of lineups with, the majority of the time they have multiple non-shooters out there. I think Cade's biggest jump has been on the defensive end. He has been excellent defensively. And one of the things that he gives you, which is unbelievably rare from a point guard, is he gives you some rim protection at point guard, which is so rare. I mean, Derek White does that better than anybody. Derek White's the guy for that. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander kind of does that. And that's kind of it. And so you look at the way this defense is built, and that kind of leads me into the second thing, which is the way that paint protection comes from everywhere. Because I think Cade is a better rim protector. Jalen Duren is a million times of a better defender. I think the most consequentially improved skill, if you want to call it a skill, on in the league this year is Jalen Duren's defense. And that's why I'm going to have him right up there for MIP, because he went from being a target on defense to somebody who is now good if you put him in a pick and roll in space, good at defending the rim. And the Pistons build their defense from the inside out, but at the same time, they're getting rim protection from Duren. They're getting it from Stewart, who's obviously incredible and had an unbelievable defensive season. They're getting it from Cade, which is a totally unconventional spot. I think Asar Thompson has had a much better rim protecting season this year. He's averaging almost a block a game. And so you look at all this paint protection they have, and then the ability to be able to kind of force drivers away from the paint on the outside as they're just fouling the hell out of everybody on the way there. It's created this incredible defense, which is, second to the Thunder right now in points allowed per possession. And third, I completely forgot what I was going to say because I talked for too long.
It'll come back to you. You just wanted us to get to the super chat, which we very much appreciate. Thank you so much for the super chat. I don't know if you can speak to this directly to Cade Cunningham, Fred, but for as long as you've covered the NBA, I don't know how many long collapsed lungs you've covered in your time doing the NBA, but you've covered players who miss the end of the regular season and then have to jump into the playoffs. This was my thing about Jason Tatum was, with where he came back, he has this ramp up period where he's going to be ready to go in the playoffs. If he just comes back for the playoffs, the Lakers are dealing with it with Austin Reeves and Luka Doncic, if they even make it to that. How concerned should we be about Cade's rustiness going into the playoffs, especially with the increased intensity of the playoffs? Again, thank you for the super chat here.
I truly have no idea because of the nature of the injury. I just don't have the slightest clue. And I think probably what it will come down to, because we're talking about a collapsed lung here, I feel even weird calling it an injury. I don't know what it is, but a collapsed lung isn't an injury, it's something else entirely. It's an internal organ. That's something completely different. And so, if I had a problem with my liver, I wouldn't say that I had an injury, I'd say there's something up with my liver. And so, by the way, somebody made this comment, and this actually was going to be my third thing. It's that this team is deeper. It's way deeper. Like a Danis Jenkins just stepping up and being awesome. The fact that Marcus Sasser just isn't really there, and then he just shows up and he hits 2 threes in a quarter, and then he just goes back into hibernation. I love the Marcus Sasser experience when it happens. But anyway, I don't know what to expect with Cade. The thing that I would be looking out for is just conditioning. When you have a collapsed lung, all right, well, what's your cardio going to be like? How much are you able to move? What kind of shape are you going to be in when you get back and being, not only in the playoffs is it more intense and more meaningful and everything like that, presumably you're also going to play more minutes. And so, if he's got to play 38 minutes, 40 minutes, is that possible? Is it something that would affect him? Even if it is possible, I have no clue. These are questions I have. And hopefully for his sake, he's good to go because he's had an unbelievable season. But he's a gamer. I'm sure he's going to want to be out there. I'm sure he's going to try to go nuts if he can.
O2, real quick before you ask Fred your next question, quick updates. Maybe this is the time to knock those out. In terms of Cade and Isaiah were, I know them. Cade Cunningham and Isaiah Stewart were upgraded to questionable for tomorrow night. Is that right?
Yeah, upgraded to questionable for the first time since their injuries. So Cade's missed 11, Stu's missed 13. They were upgraded to doubtful briefly in Philly before being downgraded back to out, which was weird because they were not in Philly, so there's never a chance of them playing in that game. But I guess the brief upgrade to doubtful signaled that they're getting closer, and now they're questionable. So slight chance that Cade will get at least a couple games in, if not 3, before the playoffs.
And then real quick before we go to break, if Fred wants to touch on this, he can as well. But Tolu Smith converted to the standard NBA contract, and Bobby Klintman waived for the Pistons today. 0-2. Quick thoughts. Tolu's been getting some minutes recently because of the Stewart injury and all of that. We've seen him play well. Klintman just hasn't been able to see the floor and look like an NBA player. I know you responded to some people on Twitter about this, but quick thoughts on this before we go to break. And Fred, if you have any Tolu Smith or Bobby Klintman thoughts, you can definitely get them in as well.
Yeah, I think Tolu had some big rebounds against OKC last week. So Fred did see a little bit of a Tolu Smith experience.
There we go.
So a 2-year deal for Tolu, second year non-guaranteed. Bobby Klintman waived. Not to the same extent as Danis, but still to a meaningful extent. Tolu's played some real minutes for this team. Stu obviously has missed time, has continued to miss time. During 2-game suspension, he's missed a couple of games here and there. Tolu's played 13 games. He's been active for, I think, closer to 40. And he just gives them a bit more reinforcement in the playoffs. I think you see some matchups where you just need a little bit more size out there. I think Paul Reed, I think he just doesn't give is a big 7-footer when you need one. So they get that at Tolu in case the guy's in foul trouble. Two-way guys are not playoff eligible. So, I think that's a pretty big part of it, is that Tolu's playoff eligible. You saw Tolu maybe 15, 20 minutes. I don't know if you have any deep Tolu thoughts, but
I've seen him more than that because unfortunately I'm watching enough basketball to know the Sacramento Kings rotation. So,
yeah.
I think my one thing for him is it gives them a little bit extra insurance. If like a guy like Stu, who's had some injuries this year, it gives them some insurance specifically as a box out guy and a rebounder, because he's a good offensive rebounder and he's a pretty good box out guy. And if you're in a playoff series and you got to go up against, let's say, Mitchell Robinson or Karl Anthony Towns or Nikola Vucevic, and Vucevic obviously has his flaws, but like big box out guy, and you look at those guys who are in the East, you want to be able to have a guy who maybe you can throw out there for 12 minutes against those guys. If you don't have Stu on a night, you don't have Duren on a night, and Paul Reed is a great hustle rebounder. He's a great hustle rebounder. He's a great, I'm going to get my hand on this loose ball kind of guy. And that's why he's great in passing lanes and all that kind of stuff. But he's not that type of rebounder. So it gives you a little bit more rebounding versatility if you're in a pinch.
Okay, let's take our first break here. When we come back, 0-2, you can lead us off, continuing our conversation with Fred Katz of The Athletic.
All right, we are back with segment 2. Let's go back to Cade real quick, and then we can move on to some other guys. You said Cade falling short of the 65-game rule kind of messes up your MVP battle, and I'm sure first team All NBA. There's a few guys who have just been spectacular this season. I was just curious where Cade would have fallen had he qualified for the 65-game rule.
First team and probably fifth.
Yeah,
for assuming that Luka is eligible and that the injury that Wemby has doesn't cost him to miss the rest of the year, which we don't know yet. If those guys are ineligible, then third. So I mean, that's the way we have to talk about the awards voting now, right? So somewhere between fifth and third. I'm going to vote for Shea as my MVP. I don't want to lock myself into it yet, but I'm pretty certain I'm going to put Jokic second, and I'm pretty certain I'm going to put Luka 3 and Victor 4, and then Cade would be my guy after that.
What are your thoughts on the 65-game rule? Just real quick. I know this has been a huge topic of conversation here recently and is going to honestly be more, right? Because ultimately the decision on Luka is really going to drive this conversation. If he ends up getting the whatever extraordinary circumstances or whatever it's called for the birth of his child in another country, it's going to continue to be a conversation. Your thoughts on the 65-game rule just in general?
I think sometimes when we talk about the 65-game rule, as I think sometimes in the public, we've lost the logic for why it existed. And by the way, I'm not saying it was good logic or effective logic, but people talk about, oh, why would you take that out of the awards voters' hands? Why would you make this rule and make it at 65 when it's going to affect award? What's the difference between 65 and 63? None of that was the point. It wasn't to legitimize awards voting. They did it knowing it would delegitimize awards voting and figured that that would be a worthwhile sacrifice in order to try to encourage players to play more games in the era of load management. They figured, you know what? If we say that you have to play 65 games to play MVP, then you aren't going to load manage to get to 63 because you're going to want to get 65 to be eligible for MVP and for All-NBA and all the other stuff. I think we have to frame the conversation differently when we have it as like a basketball watching society. It was put out there for a different reason. The other thing that I will say is I don't necessarily have the Players Association put out that statement regarding Cade Cunningham, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago or whenever that was. I don't have sympathy for the Players Association because they agreed to this rule and negotiated it into a CBA that is as much theirs as it is the league's. They negotiate and agree on that thing as much as the owners do. And so I don't have sympathy for them as an entity. I do have sympathy for the individual players who get screwed because the reality is the league and the Players Association, for whatever reason, when they accepted it, decided, you know what, there are going to be individuals who get screwed by this, and we're going to have to deal with the individuals who get screwed by this. And I do have sympathy for the individuals who get screwed, like Luka, if he does, or Cade, if he does. And I also have sympathy for the fans or just the appreciators of the game in the league who want to see the awards be an accurate representation of what happened during that season. So I don't like the rule. I didn't like it when it happened. And I dislike the nuances of it even more than I dislike the overall part of it. Like why is there a 20-minute rule? Why does the 20-minute rule apply to most improved player? That's the thing that I don't get. Because if you look at it from the perspective of, we're going to look at it as the sanctity of awards. Well, what's more improved than going from a little used player to someone who starts playing 35 minutes a game by the end of the year? Why should that guy who improved so much that his minutes total got doubled, why should that guy not be eligible for most improved? And secondly, which is really the reason these awards were put in the first place and why I mentioned it to begin with, who has ever said, oh no, I can't load manage tonight, I might not be eligible for MIP? That's never happened. That's never happened. All NBA, where the incentives are, all that stuff, that's great. No, there's never been a history. There's never been anything in the history of the NBA where somebody has said, oh, I can't load manage tonight, I might not be eligible for MIP. Mostly, by the way, because if you're MIP, you probably weren't previously a star and nobody really cares if you're load managing to begin with. So like, I don't love the rule. I don't even like the rule. I hate how the awards voting is going to look because of it. Because the reality is, like, if Luka's not eligible, if Wemby's not eligible, which it sounds like he will be because the Spurs said the injury wasn't serious, but it's like, it's not just Cade who's getting crossed off. Like, Anthony Edwards isn't going to be eligible. If he might be somebody who I put in that fifth spot, you know, like there are a lot of guys. Devin Booker isn't going to be eligible. He's going to fall just short. And there's a difference between playing 65 and 40, but there's not really much of a difference between playing 65 and 63, you know? So I don't like it, but they agree. It's their awards. They agreed to it. It's their awards. I'm just going by the rules.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the 20-minute rule just because I actually brought that up last night because there's been a little bit of confusion, understandably, among Pistons fans about Asar and JD. Asar's played 70 games. JD, I think, has played 69 or 68. I may have that backwards, but they're still both short of the 65-game rule because Asar has like 6 games where he played fewer than 15 minutes. And then he's got like 3 or 4 games between 15 and 20, but only 2 of those count. So he's still got to hit 20 minutes in 2 more games to actually qualify, even though he's played 70. And during, like, to a lesser extent, it's pretty similar. He's had like 3 or 4 games he's left because of injury. And he should be over it by 3 or 4 games, but he's still a game short so it's just, after a certain point, I feel like it gets too granular. And like, to your point about MIP, it's just, in general, it gets to the point to where you're almost picking nits too much. And either just make it a flat 65 game rule or not. If you have a team that decides to play a guy a minute to qualify, like, or you want to make it, 10 minutes something, but 20 minutes, I think just really just makes it excessively harsh on players. And to your point, they did agree to it. I thought it was a bad rule when they came up with it because it can only hurt players. Like, it doesn't really hurt the owners, it just hurts players. But yeah, the 20-minute rule, if they scrapped anything, I think that would help a lot.
It does hurt the owners.
Okay.
It does. Because at some point, it's not going to happen this year, but at some point, somebody who's like in his third season and is eligible for an extension and is eligible for the contract escalators is going to slide onto third team when he shouldn't slide onto third team. And he's going to want the escalators, and the owner is not going to want to give it. The front office isn't going to give it to that player because he's not actually worthy of that, because he's like a top 25 player and not a top 15 player. And it's going to cause a whole stink. It's going to be a whole thing, and it's not going to be good for that franchise when that guy's eligible for a thing and the team has to explain to him, oh no, but you're not actually all NBA. It's not actually good. Also, can I just make a plea to the NBA?
Yeah.
Just a plea. Can you make award eligible games a stat? Like, how are you going to make this rule and then have every single person who wants to have a conversation about it click on the player's name, go to the game log, sort by minutes, see how many minutes he played at 20 plus games, go to the standings, add up wins plus losses, see how many games they have left, see if that player is able to get get there, and then do that for every single player we consider voting on for All-NBA. And I'm not even just talking about the voters. If a fan wants to have a casual conversation, see if their guy is eligible or not, you got to go through a whole process. Do you know how long that takes? That's like 4 minutes. But when you're doing it for 15 guys, that's like an hour for no reason. Just make awards eligible games and awards eligible games remaining. Just make those stats. Just put them up on your NBA.com stats and just make them a thing. How is that not a thing? It's been years of this. Just make it a thing.
Fred, I'm making a prediction right now. In the next 3 months, Basketball Reference will have this as part of their Basketball Reference pages. I think you just got something that's going to happen over there. It's a great point, because as you went through the process, I was playing it out in my head exactly the same of game log, filter, and then the point of, okay, how many games are left in the season? How many did they play? How many did they miss? Like, it's a disaster.
And it's also annoying to have to explain. Like, I'm explaining last night. Oh yeah, well, Asar has these 2 games that actually do count, even though they're less than 20. But he has these games that were, short of 15 that don't count at all. And it takes a while to explain. So
you know
I will
what
also
other game
back
counts
that plea.
that we forget about that's going to play into Wembanyama's hands is the in-season tournament championship game, where the stats do not count. The stats do not exist for what happened in that game, but Wembanyama can count it as a game played whenever it goes to awards. So, okay. I don't want to, I truly, Fred, I realize we're live here, but if you don't want to do this, just say no and we'll move on. But there are some other Pistons awards. It's an exciting year, right? Coach of the year, Asar defensive player, not of the year, but all defense team stuff.
And to your point about escalators during potential all NBA, with several guys out, would be a topic too.
Yes. What any of those that stand out to you? JB Coach of the Year, Asar defense, Jalen Duren, as Omari just mentioned, potentially sliding into third team if enough guys aren't eligible. Whichever one you want to take all of them. I don't care.
True. Yeah. You're right. I said nobody's probably going to do it, but you're right. I forgot about Duren, where he might make All NBA now. He's legitimately on there. Okay. Coach of the Year, I'm going to vote for Joe Mazzulla. Bickerstaff will be on my ballot. I think he's done a phenomenal job. Mazzulla, I just feel like the way that he's shaken up the way that Boston plays, specifically like the rebounding strategy they have, is insane. And so that kind of gives me a little bit of and I just can't believe how good that offense is. But Bickerstaff has done an unbelievable job. I have nothing negative to say about the job he's done this year. He's been amazing. I think it's just going to be, for me, Charles Lee has been amazing, but I don't think I'm going to, and Jordan Ott, I don't think I'm going to end up putting them on. It's going to be Mazzulla 1, and then I think I'm going to have Mitch Johnson and Bickerstaff, 2 and 3 in some order. MIP, I'm almost certainly going to vote for Duren just because of what I said earlier. On top of the offensive improvement, there's the fact that like the most improved consequential, discernible skill in the league this year is Duren's defense. He's gotten so much better there. Him and Nickeil Alexander-Walker are going to be my top 2 for that. Those guys have just made unbelievable strides this year, and they're both super deserving. Like they both had unbelievable seasons. Asar, well, I can say this: I do my all perimeter defense. I do all perimeter defense teams for the Athletic at the end of every season now, and I had the second team come out last week, and I had a Pistons commenter. Clear, it must have been a Pistons commenter. Maybe it was just a huge Asar Thompson fan. Comment on that story. How is Asar Thompson, or Fred's going to have to explain how Asar Thompson is not on this list. And in a rare moment, I decided to reply to a commenter. And I just said, there's a first team, bro. Like, are you kidding? Are you getting so angry? Are you just looking to be so angry that you're not even waiting until the first team comes out? There were Knicks fans who got mad at me for not having OG Anunoby on the second team. And I'm like, wait for the first team, guys. If I had him on the second team, you probably would have been angry I didn't have him first. Calm down. Not everything is a slight at your guy. Maybe I think they're really good too. So I have Asar first team, all perimeter defense. I haven't done out my all defense yet. Obviously, it's going to be a disproportionate amount of bigs. Definitely Wembanyama there if he's eligible. Definitely Gobert. Definitely Chet Holmgren. Those centers for sure. Possibly Bam Adebayo. But Asar being on my first team all perimeter, that should tell you I think he's been one of the 5 best perimeter guys, and that gets you to 9 right there. So I think there's a pretty good chance I'll end up having Asar probably second team all defense. And then Duren all NBA, he's very much in contention. I haven't gone that far down the ladder just because of the exact thing I just described. I started looking at eligible guys and I was like, oh my goodness, I'll just do this once everyone's done. I've done enough research on all the guys. I know I'm just gonna do it when it's done. He very well might be on my third team, but I can't say if he's not on my third team, he's going to be one of the first guys off.
I want to get into just the Eastern Conference big picture, the playoffs, all of that here in just a little bit when we finish off in the last 15 minutes. Before we do that, I have one more just Piston specific question. Danis Jenkins, what are your thoughts on the thing about Danis is Pistons fans have just been waiting for one of these players that was an undrafted free agent or came up through the two-way or whatever to a win on the margins from a Pistons front office. And Danis Jenkins looks like he can be that guy. What have you thought of his play and what he means for this Pistons team, more importantly?
I think it's been incredible. I think he's an amazing find. I think his pace is unbelievable for a guy who's essentially a rookie. I understand the argument for why like he should be on an MIP ballot. I won't have him on an MIP ballot. It just feels weird to have a second-year player who didn't play at all in his first year on an MIP ballot. I can't really explain it beyond that. I'm normally extremely logical and thought out with my reasoning for why I vote for and don't vote for certain guys. But I don't know. It's like if you're a rookie by baseball rules, then I feel like I can't really vote for you for MIP. You know what I mean? Because you're a rookie in my mind. And so I won't have him on there. But his ability to step in when Cade is out, and he was balling before that, and the game he had against the Lakers and going for 30, and he has been amazing. He's quick as heck going to the rim, and he's a great find, and he gives them something also when Cade is there too, not just as a standing guy for Cade, where like I thought what was so great for them last year, what their real turnaround last year was when they traded for Dennis Schroeder, and they had the Schroeder honeymoon that every team has for like 3 months, right? And what was so great about Schroeder is like by the end of the season and in the playoffs, they're playing all of these Cade Schroeder lineups. And if I recall, I think those lineups were like plus 10 per 100 possessions. And Cade can do really, really well when he's just got like a second side ball handler there, because it's a lot harder to blitz him. You want to take away the possibility of blitzing Cade, because teams are going to have the prerogative to do that, because the Pistons don't have a lot of shooting and they don't have a lot of guys who are going to make you pay if you put 2 on the ball against them when Cade is that guy. He's just so far and away their best shot creator that you want to take that away. But if you can put another shot creator next to him, it really changes the dynamic of how they operate. Schroeder also gave him like a full court press and handsiness, and Jenkins is feisty and physical. And I love how he plays. I think they're probably going to use him and Cade together, I would imagine, right? They're going to use those guys together in important moments in the playoffs. And I think it'll probably be really good for them in important moments in the playoffs. He's been a huge find, and now they got him on a very reasonable contract. Him and AJ Mitchell, like same bucket for me. Him and AJ Mitchell.
All right, let's go to break. When we come back, O2, let's get Fred's thoughts on not just the Pistons playoff situation, but the Eastern Conference landscape as a whole.
All right, we are back with segment 3. Fred, the East is Pistons 1. Boston, Knicks, I believe in some order. Cavs probably 4, Atlanta probably 5, and then chaos. I guess, how do you sort of see the bottom of the East shaking out, and sort of what do you, if you had to rank in your mind who the most likely matchups for the Pistons are in the first round, how would you go about that?
Hold on, let me call up this random number generator.
Yeah.
I'll give you an answer. How am I supposed to know? How am I supposed to know the answer to that question?
We can have like an idea. I mean, come on. Like Charlotte's been really good. Charlotte's been good, for example.
Charlotte's been awesome. Charlotte has been awesome. I think Charlotte will keep being awesome. And I don't think Charlotte is going to get the 8th seed, if only because if they end up in the 7-8 play-in, then I'm going to pick them to win that game, even if they're on the road. So I think Charlotte will get like the 7, or the 6 or the 5, and not the 8. I guess if I'm gonna power rank them, I'm gonna say I think Charlotte and Atlanta are maybe 5 and 6, which then gives us like Philly or Toronto or Orlando in that 7, 8, 9 range. And you know what? I think Toronto just gives 8 seed vibes the most. I think Toronto gives 8 seed vibes. Toronto, I think, would probably be the best matchup for the Pistons. I don't see how Toronto would score against Detroit. Their half court offense is too struggling, and they live so much off of just getting on the break and running. And they have a good offense or a good defense, but a lot of their defense is predicated on pushing guys late into the shot clock. And Cade is a really good late clock player, assuming he's going to be playing in himself in that series. I think Toronto is probably the best matchup for them. And maybe, Philadelphia is either the best or the worst.
Yeah.
Might as well get the random number generator for that one too. Philadelphia might be the worst if they're the Sixers that are good, and they're the best if they're the Sixers that have nobody. I think put Orlando closer to the Toronto bucket, probably, just because what a weird season from them. What a strange season from them, where they just kind of haven't lived up to things and look so disjointed in every way. And defensively, they haven't been anywhere near where I thought they were going to be. Like, everyone talks about the offense, but this was the number 2 defense in the NBA last year, and it's just not. It hasn't been all year. And that's one where I'm just disappointed in the year they've had. I think Detroit is probably in very good shape, no matter who they go up against here. But that's the benefit you get from being the number 1 seed.
All right, let's just, with all due respect to the Atlanta Hawks, who are 11 games over 500, to the Raptors, to the Hornets, who have played great, to the Sixers, who, if healthy, are scary. Let's just say the first round goes chalk, Fred, and we get to the 4 teams, the Pistons, the Celtics, the Knicks, and the Cavs. Where are you at? I'm not going to ask you to power rank or however you want to engage that discussion of those 4 teams. Is there specific matchups that would determine who you think would make it out? Is there one team that you feel really confident in and one that you really don't? Like, just where are you at on that group of 4 teams here at the top of the East?
I think Boston is definitely the favorite. They have to be. I mean, that's a team that's kind of doing everything. Tatum just had his triple-double the other night. He's kind of getting back into rhythm. I think the dynamic between him and Jaylen Brown has looked pretty seamless since Tatum has returned. And you could look at the shooting numbers with Tatum and say, oh, look, he's not Jason Tatum yet. And if you watch the actual games and you see how Boston is playing and you see how Tatum is moving and how he's playing, his decision-making, his quickness, everything else, and then you take into account that when a player comes back from injury, almost always the shooting is the thing that comes back last. Just like the shooting is the thing that lasts you for the longest in terms of age, it's the thing that comes back last after injuries. It just takes a little while to get that touch back. If you watch him making all the right decisions and looking good physically and playing very well defensively and just looking like Jason Tatum, except the shot doesn't go in quite as often at the beginning of the time he returned, and you just operate with knowledge of like, that shot's going to come. He's Jason Tatum. He didn't forget how to shoot, I promise. If there's one thing that happened during his timeout, he did not forget how to shoot. Like, that did not happen. You're like, damn, this team is deep. This team guards. They score. Derek White is amazing. Derek White has had the best year of his career. I understand that the shooting numbers are garbage. Derek White has had the best year of his career. He's been unbelievable this year. Defensively, it's a whole other level. It's insane. He's being used completely differently. They're using him completely away from the ball. He's like guard Giannis. He really is. I'm not even kidding. Getting that level of rim protection from a 6'4" point guard is unheard of. He's averaging 1.3 blocks per game. No one his height has done that ever other than Dwayne Wade. He's allowing 55% shooting at the rim when he's the closest defender on dunks and layups. Like 13th in the NBA amongst all qualifiers, not amongst guards. Like he's like even with like Ivica Zubac, like crazy, just an insane season from Derek White. That team is incredibly good, and I have them number 1. And Detroit and the Knicks and Cleveland, I think I'd probably have them in the order I just said. The Pistons are still young, but they beat up on the Knicks so badly during the regular season that how can you watch that and then be like, yeah, Knicks over Pistons? I don't know how you can really do that. And the Knicks haven't really done enough to inspire my full-on trust in them, even though I think they totally could win that series. And Cleveland hasn't really inspired full-on trust for me either. Like, I don't 100% trust either of those teams, even though they're the more veteran and they're talented. And Detroit's got these obvious flaws. I mean, the thing that concerns me the most is the shooting. Like, can you win the East with that little 3-point shooting in 2026? I don't know. I don't know if you can. But I don't know, weird year. It's been a weird regular season. Cade's awesome. He's capable of playing like the best player in any Eastern Conference playoff series that he plays in. So I'm not ruling it out. Why not?
All right. Couple ones to finish up here from Richard. Knicks seem to not get along as a group, as in they dislike each other. Is that an accurate assessment? I don't know how in depth you can speak on this, Fred, but there is a little bit of this perception from the outside.
Yeah, no, I don't think they dislike each other. I also don't think they have a locker room that's in perfect harmony. Like, to me, Omari, tell me your thoughts on this. To me, the healthiest part of the Pistons locker room isn't that they get along. Like they do get along, but that's not what makes them a good locker room. What makes them a good locker room is that Stu can walk up to a Sar and be like, or Duran especially, because those guys are so close. Like Stu can walk up to Duran and be like, you keep messing up this pick and roll coverage. I'm going to kill you if you mess that up again. Only Isaiah Stewart, we both know, is not saying that as nicely as I just did. And he is using way more profanities than I just did. And Duran can do the same thing to Stu. And they're both like, yep, message received. Done. Got it. And they've got this great line of communication to where they can criticize each other or I should say they can critique each other, and it doesn't feel like criticism. It feels like feedback, even if it's said in an aggressive way, because they have so many kind of competitive maniacs. And I've covered teams that are like that. And I've covered teams where the line of communication is not as phenomenal. And because they just, whatever reason, it's just like, that's the rarity, what the Pistons have. That's the exception. That's why it stands out to me. They're not the only team in the NBA like that, but it's rare that a team gets like that, especially when they're young. Like the Pistons and the Thunder are really interesting to me because they're both like that, and they're both really young. And that's not really a young guy trait. So I find it really interesting that you have guys who are mature enough to be able to kind of handle their business in that way and be successful in doing it. And the Knicks, I think, don't have that level of locker room. Like I don't think they have that. And I think that comes through sometimes in the way that they play, where like, I said the Pistons are greater than the sum of their parts. Their whole is greater than the sum of their parts. And I think the Knicks kind of just are the sum of their parts. They're not worse than the sum of their parts. And they don't dislike each other. And they don't have bad guys. They just kind of are the sum of their parts. You don't really see them enhancing each other. Every once in a while, yeah, totally. But on the whole, you don't really see it. You don't really see that synergy between Brunson and Cat on the offensive end. You don't always see them playing that way on the defensive end. There's a lot of times where you're just like, that could be more. That could have been a little bit more together. Even though like this is a team that's really highly ranked in offense and top 10 in defense, number 2 ranked defense since January 21st, I think, number 2 ranked defense in the NBA. Like the numbers are all there, production's there, but you're like, it's missing something. When you grade them against like, can they win the East? It's missing something. But they could win the East because they are really talented. And they almost did last year.
All right. This for two of you or both of you from our guy, YouTube user. I'm 30 minutes behind, so this might be out of order, but I've heard Trajan is incredibly competitive, even though soft-spoken. Is that your read talking to him? So, Fred, I don't know how much you've got a chance to be around Trajan, interview him, talk to him, whatever. I obviously, Trajan was a very high-level basketball player himself. In your experience with him, is that translated to the front office, even with his soft-spoken kind of persona?
I think Omari would answer that way better than I could.
Yeah, I don't know if I call him soft-spoken. I think he's very direct. But I wouldn't call him soft-spoken. When I hear soft-spoken, that kind of makes me think of somebody that maybe doesn't talk as much as they should, and like that's not really Trajan. I think he's a pretty direct person, but very competitive. I mean, obviously he had a great career at Duke, but don't have a great career in Russia. I've seen him shoot the ball a little bit. Still goes in at a pretty high clip. I think he's a great communicator. I think he talks to people around the organization, and they just talk about, just how locked in he is, aware of everything that's going on, talks to everybody, just has a very thorough overview of where everybody in the organization is, what they're trying to accomplish and things like that. So I don't know what, like, I know what you're getting at with soft-spoken, but I wouldn't say he's soft-spoken. I would say he's absolutely somebody who's direct and wants to know everything that's going on.
Real quick, we'll end on this and then we'll let Fred get out of here. Blog Piston says, what is the magic number to keep the pick from the Wolves? Is one win over Indiana and loss from Suns versus Houston? Right now, Minnesota is 3 games above Phoenix in the standings, which would, if Phoenix were to pass them, that would put Minnesota in 19th, which then protects the pick swap. So you need a couple more losses if you want to completely maximize it, let Atlanta pass them, and then stay above Phoenix. So it is something to watch for Pistons fans, because if they fall down below that 20 number, then Detroit's picking at 28. So yes, Michael says, thanks, Fred. Great to hear a perspective from outside the Piston community. Fred, I say this with I love the guests we bring on from a national perspective. I truly do. But you were as impressive as anybody we've brought on in terms of your Pistons specific knowledge. Like, straight up. I'm not trying to whatever while you're still here. We've brought on national guys sometimes where it's like, man, I wish could have got a little bit into the details. Really respect what you do covering the NBA as a whole, and your ability to talk about the Pistons in the depth that you were able to today. So thank you for joining us. I'm glad I could come on and talk about Tolu's rebounding. that was the best part. Next time we'll make you talk about the Kings and prove it. Let everybody know, because after this, people should be following you. They should be listening to you. They should be just taking in all of your content. So let them know where they can find that. Yeah, so you can read my stuff on The Athletic. I've got my all perimeter defense first team coming out on Wednesday morning is when it's scheduled to be right now. So you can check that out. I've got a section on Asar in there, obviously, as I said before. You can subscribe to my podcast on Patreon, patreon.com/Katz and Shoot. Mostly a Knicks pod, but might be relevant to Pistons fans if they end up matching up in a playoff series, especially coming up. And, follow me on Twitter @FredKatz. All right. Thank you so much. O2, take it away, my guy.
Fred, you're the GOAT, man. Thank you so much for coming on. We'll see in a couple of weeks if this Pistons Knicks storyline becomes a little bit more relevant. So with that said, big thanks to our audio producer, Robin Chan. The big shout out to West Davenport, as always. And we'll talk to you all next week.